Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead and put your name and organization in the chat so we can see where everybody is calling in from, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Hello, everyone. Go ahead if you haven't already and introduce yourself, your organization in the chat. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you haven't already, please continue to introduce yourself in the chat so that we can see where everybody is calling in from. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we'll be going through your role in reporting fraud, and our presenter, Dominique Umba from the ASAP2 project, will be giving today's presentation. Just a few quick notes. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Continue to let us know where you're from, your organization, and your country in the chat. It's great to see everybody. At any point during the webinar, you're free to ask questions. We actually encourage that you please ask questions. We will be monitoring the Q&A box. So if you can please go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A box. That way our presenter today can answer any questions that you have. We also have some participation. So at any time, if the presenter asks for your participation, go ahead and participate in that. A recording of today's webinar, as well as the presentation slides, will be available on the IntraHealth ASAP resources website, and I'll go ahead and send that link in the chat shortly. ASAP2, or Accelerating Support to Advanced Local Partners, is an a USAID funded project. ASAP2 has two strategic objectives. The first is to strengthen local partners to comply with regulations as they transition to receive PEPFAR funding as a USAID prime partner. And the second is to prepare local partners to directly manage, implement, and monitor PEPFAR programs and maintain consistent PEPFAR program achievement and quality. Many of you I know are familiar with the ASAP2 project. Some key results from ASAP 1 and 2. ASAP has supported 126 local organizations in 18 different countries. 113 of those are local partner organizations, and 13 have been local government partners. And here is a list of the countries that we have supported. And many of you are calling in today from many of these countries. So thank you for joining us. ASAP has broadcasted over 90 webinars with more than 20,000 attendees in 76 different countries. You can find many of our past webinars on our ASAP resources website. And I'll go ahead and send that link in the chat shortly. Most webinars, or many webinars, are available in 3 different languages: French, English, and Portuguese. Today, the presentation will be in English, but there are many in French and Portuguese if that is your preferred language. You'll go ahead and open any of the various webinars, and you'll be able to watch the recording directly on the website, as well as download a PDF of the presentation. The same is true for today's webinar. So go ahead and check that ASAP Resources website for the presentation slides after this webinar. Today, our presentation is being given by Dominique Mba. He's an ASAP 2 Senior Capacity Advisor for Financial Management and Compliance. And he's excellent and available to answer any questions you might have and give this presentation today. So thank you, Dominique, for joining us. And I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to our participants to this webinar series. I am Tega Dominique Mba, Senior Capacity Advisor for Financial Management and Compliance. I am based in Cameroon, and this presentation is being done from Douala, the economic capital of Cameroon. So for our presentation, we have 5 key points. We're looking at some mandatory disclosures. You have a role when it comes to fraud reporting. So we try to look at US rules and regulations that give you this responsibility as far as fraud reporting is concerned. We move into defining fraud and its importance, your role in combating fraud, where we look at how you identify, combat, and report fraud and corruption. We try to look at what happens when fraud is detected, the partner organization, what would it do at the level of USAID Inspector General, what is their role, and then we may have some additional resources at your disposal. In addition to these additional resources, if you have to visit a ZAP website, there are quite a good number of resources available for you, not only limited to fraud, but now because across the other domains where we provide technical assistance. So we're trying to look at you have a responsibility. You who is involved in implementing a project funded by USAID, US government, you have that responsibility to report fraud, and you need to do it in a timely manner. Once there are some kind of violations, which could include fraud, bribery, gratuity violations, and all of that. And if you don't report, there are quite a good number of remedies which will normally follow. It is not only limited to fraud, where you need to respect US rules and regulations. When it gets to the other terms of the accord you sign with the US government in the event of any cooperative agreement, you have to make sure that the terms are fully respected. Now, when you fail to report, there are some kind of consequences. The first thing is they could impose some additional conditions. That is why those that are familiar with USAID and government awards, you have the special award conditions. These are conditions that are being imposed on a non-federal entity where they identify some specific weaknesses that have to be addressed. And these weaknesses have to be addressed within a particular time period. Now, when it is above, when they see that the aspect of non-compliance is a bit more serious, then they move now to other situation. They can impose some other kind of sanctions, which we shall see. This could be like they could withdraw cash temporarily. Parts of the activity could be disallowed. They could even suspend or terminate an award. They could equally initiate suspensions. They could take any other measures as necessary. So if you look through these slides, we have specific references. These are drawn from the uniform guidance. Now, as we proceed, we try to refresh ourselves, closing the first part of the presentation. We refresh ourselves about corruption, embezzlement, and fraud. We are in an environment, we are human in nature, whether we like it or not. These are malpractices that happen everywhere. They happen everywhere, and they happen in every society. even if you are within a profit-making or a non-profit-making environment. It happens everywhere. So all of this, we will be looking in the next presentation. What are some of those factors which encourage such kind of malpractices to happen? So we move now to the second part of our presentation. We're trying to look at what is fraud. Here we're looking at an act that somebody decides intentionally to deceive in order to misrepresent some kind of facts in order to have some financial gain or personal gain. And this takes several forms. It could be an intentional act to mislead or provide false information with the intention to deceive. We see this when it comes to procurements. We see this when it comes to accounting. We may have an opportunity to develop some of these areas a little bit detailedly as we proceed in the presentation. This can also take the form of falsification of documents, records, such that the truth is misrepresented. This can be in the form of asset misappropriation, bribery, and then the last component has to do with an intentional hiding or suppression of information. We see this when it comes to corruption and cyber crimes. So if you look to the right, there are different types of fraud, and the area where you have most of the cases is when it comes to asset misappropriation, and then accounting fraud is the least. So try to look at some components which individuals, organizations need to understand if they have to implement some kind of preventive measures, if they have to improve upon their internal controls, if they have to develop some kind of effective detection strategies, which can help to minimize and reduce fraud and corruption. Remember, we cannot have like a zero kind of situation. There will be always some kind of inherent risks when it comes to fraud. So the first is the opportunity. What is this component talking about? People have access to information, they have access to resources, and they think and they go to commit fraudulent acts because they know that it can go undetected. The other one is rationalization. People get into committing fraud because they can justify their actions and they think that their actions is what they are doing is reasonable. It's like everybody's like getting involved and they think that no, they shouldn't be the exception. Let them just flow along with the others. And the third component has to do with pressure. So pressure could be because of some kind of social entanglements, perhaps because of economic, which are situations that compel individuals to engage in fraudulent activities. Because somebody has some kind of lifestyle and thinks that to maintain this lifestyle, he needs some extra money, which is above the person's income. That is already like some kind of pressure that the person is subjected to. So a better understanding of these three components is very, very necessary when we need to put in place strategies to minimize and mitigate fraud. So what are the key implications of fraud? Here we are looking at they have financial consequences. The organization will normally need to lose some money if they move into some kind of fraudulent activities. The donors will not be happy. There are penalties that can come that the organization can be faced with. This can be criminal. This can be criminal penalties, and there are fines. There could be fines that the organization will suffer because of being involved in a fraudulent activity. The other aspect has to do with its reputation. Its reputation will be tarnished. Imagine an organization that is involved in fraud. I don't think any person would like to go and identify themselves with that kind of organization. It affects even the various stakeholders, the employees. They are working with very low morale. The productivity will also decline seriously because once there is fraud, there's that increase of because investigations have to go on. You are doing your work, and at the same time, you are providing information to justify what has happened. You are providing explanation, and you see that the workload increases. There's the other aspect has to do with trust, the lack of trust from the stakeholders. Here we are looking at even the donors themselves. Would they, other donors, they will not also trust the organization that would have moved into an activity like that, or an individual who is into a kind of fraudulent activity. That's why it's always good to do a thorough check of the various stakeholders that every entity is working with to ensure that they are working with people of a certain level of integrity, organizations of a certain level of integrity, who are not amongst the least sanctioned or the sanction list. Okay. We'll make a small pause, and that will be an opportunity for you. Use the chat box and answer this question. What are some implications of fraud and corruption? So if we say we have 30 seconds to 1 minute to respond to this question, please use the chat box and let's see, get your answers. So what are some implications of fraud and corruption? Thank you, Rosita Robinson. That's good. So all of us, we are looking at C, all of the above. The program will have fewer funds and resources to provide essential services. The stakeholders will lose trust. The morale of staff will suffer, and there will be some kind of legal consequences, which could be criminal, civil penalties, and so on. All right. Thank you very much for those who have taken time to respond. We can now proceed. Thank you very much. So we are looking at, you need to identify fraud and corruption. What is your role? What you need to understand is there are various sources of fraud, and this they span from the regulatory organizations to administrative functions and to the various, when to our administrative functions and to other sectors. You have the procurement, logistics, and every other area. So it's not like there is a particular area where fraud cannot be committed, right from the regulatory body, even to those that are providing oversight, even right down to patients and providers. So we're trying to look at some kind of scenarios that would throw more light on this. Okay, so what are the main types of fraud to look out? We'll try to talk about a few. We're looking at some kind of payments that contractors, project contractors request from vendors in order to award contracts. We're looking at the aspect of procurements. So these are some kind of informal payments. Employees could decide to steal inventory. Employees responsible for managing of inventories could steal. They could steal medical supplies, construction materials, and then they sell them to the black market. We'll be looking at a situation where supplies were finally found on the local market, and there were quite a good number of sanctions and consequences faced by such organizations. The third component has to do with data manipulation to inflate achievements. Instead, when you have 4 new positives, instead of reporting 4, you decide to report 5, 6, 10, just to prove that you are working well, you are on track, and that is false information that you are providing to the donor. So the other aspect has to do with creation of fictitious individuals on the payroll. You have ghost workers, they are there on the payroll, and funds are being diverted through these accounts, but they are individuals who created these ghost accounts, ghost workers that are actually benefiting. The other aspect has to do with conflict of interest. You are in a position where you know that decision-making, your decision in a particular situation will not be objective. And this is due to a close relation that is involved in some kind of procurement and a kind of bid. And you are part of the selection committee, you are part of the procurement process, but you don't declare that there's a conflict of interest such that other measures could be taken to take you out from the procurement process. You stay on to the procurement process just because you want to influence the decision and ensure that a contract is awarded to your close relative. The other aspect has to do with kickbacks. We have suppliers and contractors, they provide bribes just to secure a contract. We equally have it even among staff. At times, staff is supposed to be paid $100, but the staff sign as having received $100, but eventually what is effectively paid is $80. Those are all malpractices which all of us, we need to put our hands on deck. Remember, there is a responsibility. That's why in the beginning of this presentation, we talk about mandatory disclosures. It is a must that we need to report. And there are quite a good number of consequences which we have been able to see, which all of us, we need to put our hands together in order to avoid. Because of an action of a single individual, many other people can get to suffer. All right. So we'll try to look at a few examples and the various indicators. So the first has to do with the informal payment, restrict access to the poor. So what are the indicators? So if there's some kind of informal payment which restrict access to the poor, patients will report being asked to pay informal fees. Because if people have to pay fees for a particular service that is actually supposed to be free, what happens? It will only be those that will be able. In that case, they restrict access to the poor. Now, the other thing has to do with inventory. If there is theft, embezzlement, what will happen will be there will be so many variances at the level of inventory. When they are checking the physical stock to reconcile with what is in the system, the theoretical stock, those differences could be explained. Either there's theft, there's embezzlement, there's bribery. And normally, once this happens, they will continue to limit access to medicines. People who are actually supposed to benefit, they may not be able to benefit because who knows where some of these stolen items find themselves. Perhaps they find themselves on the local market. Things are intended for beneficiaries. They are on the local market, and there is for those who have the money in order to buy. The other aspect has to do with low efficiency due to fraud in procurement process because they award a contract to somebody, somebody negotiates to have a contract. What will happen is we may have either overpriced commodities. They may supply at very high prices, which is different from the normal prices that are supposed to happen in the market, which means that they don't respect the reasonableness of costs. Or the other aspect is they may even supply items of very low quality. We try to look at absenteeism. Absenteeism also limits access to health personnel. People take off time instead of going to the field to carry out project activities. They find themselves going to conduct their own personal businesses instead of working for the interests of the organization. So they are paid. In the end, the project is not actually benefiting from that cost if they take time off to do their own things. The other aspect has to do with you have some kind of middlemen who are there to limit. And those middlemen who are there to intervene, those are some kind of brokers who are actually unnecessary. And they are not just there working for free. They will normally have a fee for whatever thing that they are doing. And that one impacts the projects significantly. Okay, so we'll look at some scenarios quickly. I think we'll try to look at the situation of transportation of large volumes of drugs, where there are some missing items in the course of the shipments. How can such a situation be prevented? There should be some kind of transparency. There should be a kind of oversight. Who is carrying the goods to the field? Is the driver accompanied by somebody? From the time the items are packed onto the car, onto where the items are eventually being delivered at the facility or to the beneficiary. What kind of control? What measures have they put in place? Is there somebody who is accompanying the driver and when they are doing the delivery and all of that? Is there proper oversight? There should be policies because once there is a gap in the weakness in the system, the next thing is we need to see what actually went wrong, what gaps exist in the system, and how can we do to improve upon the way that we are doing business. We also need to protect whistleblowers. People should have the possibility to report. And once they are reported, they should not suffer any form of intimidation. So we should have adequate measures, adequate policies in place, which gives an opportunity for people to talk out if there is some kind of malpractice. And then there's also the aspect of enforcing consequences when people get involved in some kind of situation, which can be a kind of deterrent, or others will also not fall into that same trap because they've seen the kind of consequences, they've seen the kind of sanctions that people have been exposed to by going through that same route of that fraudulent route. Okay, now we go to the aspect of informal payments, which becomes quite prevalent because health workers have a low salary. Now, there is need to make some kind of additional payment for their services that are actually supposed to be free. Health workers think that they could ask for some extra pay in order to make up for their low salary. Now, there are a good number of measures that could be put in place, increase health worker salary, which can also help to boost their morale. The other aspect is looking at their workload, because people could be covering very large areas, and looking at the transport means that have been put at their disposal may not even permit them to do their work effectively. So they try to look at what are the other extra things that they can benefit, the extra benefits that they can get in order to make up for the extra work that they are doing. We also need to strengthen communication and education when it comes to fraud. That awareness needs to be continuous within the organization, within each entity. There is need to be that awareness. In addition to even the fraud policy that you do have, people need to sign as having had this received and read, understood. There should be trainings, there should be refresher trainings. The awareness needs to continue on it, and at least every year there should be some kind of trainings. There should be a culture of transparency and accountability. This culture of transparency and accountability needs to happen within an organization, and it is top management that sets the tone. If top management recognizes accountability as a good thing and transparency, then all of those below will need to also just follow. So that culture should be there, that they know that people, as they sign their contracts, they are being paid based on their contracts, and they make sure that if there is some kind of abuse, it should be seriously sanctioned. Then everybody will queue up from top management down to lower management, down to the staff. There's something I always share at times when I have this kind of trainings is if you have like an executive director that goes to the cashier and gets money, perhaps on a Friday, what do we expect of this cashier? You say, okay, you just get money, you don't respect procedures, you go get this money every week and you promise to reimburse. And if you do it once, twice, what happens? The cashier also knows that they can also have some problems and they go inside and get that money. So you already created a breach in the controls. So every other person can take an advantage of that breach in controls which have been created by top management. Okay, so we'll do a second knowledge check. So just like in the earlier case, please use the chat box and answer the question that is on the screen. What are some common types of fraud to look out for? Informal payments and kickbacks, theft, data manipulation, absenteeism and ghost workers, all of the above. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All of the above. So these are the various types of fraud which we have already seen: the informal payments and kickbacks, theft, data manipulation, absenteeism, and ghost workers. Thank you very much for your answers. I think we need to proceed. Now we are looking at the second part under section 3, which has to do with combating fraud and corruption. How do you combat fraud? These are the 3 ways at your disposal. You need to prevent, you need to dictate, and you need to respond. And how do you prevent? We are looking at designing systems that prevent corruption and fraud from occurring. Here we are looking at what policies you have in place, and there's enough trainings, there are enough communication on this policy. People are aware that these policies exist, and they are being trained on how they need to help, because in order to fight fraud, is a responsibility of all staff, even the stakeholders who will also benefit, because if the society cannot report a situation of fraud, then the beneficiaries of a project who find themselves in that society may not be able to get the maximal benefit from the services provided on the project. The other aspect has to do with detecting fraud, which normally should take the form of risk assessment. You make sure that you design processes, you put in place controls, and moreover, you do some kind of spot checks. You must be able to check to make sure that everything is happening in order, because if you don't just design controls, controls are managed by human beings. So those controls you need to check from time to time to ensure that everything is in place. And then the other aspect has to do with respond. Respond is fraud has happened. You have to make sure that you need to investigate. How do you investigate? You make sure that there are adequate investigation approaches in place, which you need to carry out. There are evaluations, there are analysis. You need to report. And the report, you need to report internally, you need to report externally. So it's very important that in order to fight fraud, you need to involve all of these elements. The policies, the procedures, all the governance systems, they are good. Trainings need to be conducted. But now you need to make sure that you also have systems in place that should permit you to do some kind of risk assessments. It's important to do a risk assessment to see what are some of those kind of areas that can pose some kind of threat to the organization achieving its objectives. While the other aspect has to do with designing investigation procedures. When people are aware of all of this system, then they are prepared to report, because they know that whatever, if they report in good faith, the matter will be investigated, and adequate sanctions meted out to those who are found guilty. Okay, so what are some of the approaches to identifying and combating fraud? We talked about the policies and procedures. You define the processes, you need to monitor, you need to report. The aspect of assurance is key. People know that all of this exists and is being respected to the letter. So who are the stakeholders that you are interacting with? What are the relevant types of fraud and corruptions? Because you need to identify your particular activity and look at what are the exposures. What are the threats that your project could suffer from some kind of fraudulent activity? You need to define if your policies are adequate. I think that is very key. Your policies need to be adequate, because that one will help to ensure that there are enough controls in place. But you also need to comply with some kind of ethical codes and policies. And then the aspect of testing. You perform risk-based testing of policies and procedures and controls. So even if the controls are there, you need to check. If somebody has to perform bank reconciliations, for instance, and the person does not do it regularly, yeah, the procedures already have it that they need to do bank reconciliations, but they are not done. If somebody has to share a copy of a bank statement, for instance, But now if this copy of bank statement is not obtained from the bank, it's a fake copy of bank statement. If you see it, you don't check from time to time, you may find yourself in some kind of crossroad, a difficult situation where people will be reporting something else, while at the level of the bank is something else that has been reported. People need to do inventory. The procedures are there. Now you need to ensure that the procedures are respected to the letter. If at the end of the day, people just go and sit and they report on account sheets that this inventory has been done and it is being reconciled to the theoretical stock, you may just need to check again and be very sure. Why not reconcile, do a random check of the theoretical stock and reconcile with the physical and be sure that things are properly reported? So we just need to ensure that the controls are in place, the right people are in place to help in managing the control environment, there are right resources, and then systematic verifications are done to ensure that the risk can be reduced as much as possible. So we're looking at some approaches to identifying and combating fraud. You have a code of ethics on one side, you have fraud. So those are the various elements that go into each of those documents. When it comes to the code of ethics, the core values of the organization need to be defined in the code of ethics to talk about ethical standards. The aspect of compliance with rules and regulations and responsibilities being defined. Instances of ethical behavior being reported and also need to be included. We need to define potential sanctions if the code is not respected. It requires that personal and organizational conflicts be disclosed. And then the aspect of whistleblowing protection also need to be very clear within the code of ethics. But now when it comes to fraud, we need to define the organization policy, establish ethical standards. The aspect of compliance with laws and regulations is also important to be included in that policy, where we also align rules, responsibilities when it comes to identification, the evaluation, prevention, detection, and respond to fraud. We also have the various reporting mechanisms, which gives an opportunity. Either we report and declare our identity, names, and everything, or we do it anonymously. We also have procedures for investigation. They need to be very clear. Now, they also need to potential consequences and disciplinary measures. All of these need to be very, very clear within the fraud policy. And then the last aspect has to do with whistleblowing protections. We also need to assure our participants. Your questions are being taken note of. We have a question from Noel. We will take those questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. What is your role in identifying and combating fraud? We just need to note that you need to adhere to some highest standards, ethical standards. Know your policies and understand and implement fraud and corruption prevention measures. You need to report promptly and then promote information on how to report the fraud to OIG. That's the Office of the Inspector General. So here you need to make sure that you need to adhere to high standards, ethical standards. This is not only for employees. Top management need to adhere to high ethical standards and then set the tone for others to follow. The policies do exist. Those policies need to be disseminated. Staff need to be trained on how to make use of those policies. All the reporting mechanisms need to be put in place. You need to make sure that controls are functioning the way they are supposed to be. If somebody has to initiate a transaction, let the right people initiate the transactions. Somebody needs to review. Some other person needs to approve. So you need to make sure that the authorization matrix is respected to the letter. Even if it's a procurement process, everybody that is in that process is actually they are the right people. the procedures are being respected for every threshold. Whether they are recruiting the right people and going through the right process. Let it not be that because somebody is close to management, they think that no, they should just recruit them and let them go through another process. So people should be educated. That is why during the orientation, staff needs to have an idea, at least a working knowledge of some of these policies, procedures, as they begin to do well within organizations. And then why not? Organizations could set time, perhaps after every 2 years, to do some kind of refresher training, so that people are aware. They are aware of all of these policies, because we should not be looking at fraud and corruption in isolation. There are organizational policies. There are opportunities that could be created because of these policies that people are not aware of, or people deliberately decide not to respect, and somebody who is not aware of a particular procedure may go and sign and engage him or herself, of which, if there was that continuous awareness, it would have been avoided. The other aspect has to do with reporting promptly. Once there's an issue of fraud and you can be able to gather some evidence that this is a situation, you have to report. You do an internal report within the organization as you proceed with the investigation. And at the same time, you also need to do a report to the donor. The other aspect has to do with reporting to OIG. You also have the option to report to the OIG. Or when you do your investigation, you can establish that these are the people, why not report directly to OIG once you have done some kind of preliminary investigation? But that now OIG can then take over to do a more detailed and thorough investigation, which can then be reported to the Justice Department, U.S. Justice Department. Okay, we'll do a knowledge check quickly. Which of the following are not ways of identifying and preventing fraud and corruption? We have 30 seconds to respond. We have adhere to the code of ethics, segregate duties and responsibilities, ignore the fraud policy, report concerns promptly, promote knowledge on how to report to the OIG. So which of the following are no ways of identifying and preventing fraud? Yeah, I think the consensus is C. We need to make sure if you ignore the fraud policy, then there is no way for you. Because with the fraud policy, just like we cover in the last section, there are quite a good number of components there that guide on how fraud will be managed. So the correct answer is C. We move on. Reporting fraud and corruption. Now, where should you report? That is a big question. You need to report to your immediate supervisor or program director. What if your immediate supervisor or program director is the concern? You need to report to the superior, a higher person. But it's always good that within the supervisor of your supervisor, but it's always good that within an organization, they should be able to put in place whistleblowing channels to do reports, so that they can report to an independent body. Either they do it through email, they do it, they can call, which can be investigated. Now, if you are a prime and you have a subprime, you're a sub-partner, I think the sub-partner should have its own system on how to report fraud within its own organization. But that does not exclude that they could report any malpractice at a level of sub-partner direct to the prime. Just like they could equally report directly to the donor. But it's always good that once there is some kind of a suspected once there are allegations of fraud, it's good that they are investigated thoroughly within the organization before you proceed to report from the level of the sub-panel to the level of the prime, and then also reporting even to the donor. There should be some kind of evidence. It should not be a matter of hearsay. It should not be a matter of allegations that we don't have evidence to back them up, and then we just proceed to report and create some kind of difficult environment for people to work in. There is also a possibility to report to OIG. Now, there are other areas, other matters that needs to be reported when it comes to trafficking of persons. This takes the form of sex trafficking, labor trafficking, or children's children. They use children as soldiers. It can also take the form of some kind of material support to entities, material transactions with groups of persons or individuals that have been sanctioned. That is why if you get into working with third parties, it is always encouraged to do some kind of check. You do a check through 3 systems. You have the SAM.gov system. You have the OFAC check, the Office of Foreign Asset and Control. And then you also have UN Security Council check. These are all systems that enable you to ensure that you are not working with the enemy of the US government. And if you want to read more, you can visit the standard provisions for non-US entities. You go to standard to mandatory provision 12 and mandatory provision number 14. They are talking about the kind of checks that need to be done. We ensure that those checks are done. Vendors, those checks are done, even for the employees, people we are working with. Let's not work with people who are enemies of the US government. Okay, now you need to report. And what should you report? You need to describe what has happened so that somebody will be able to understand exactly the situation. Where and when and where did it happen? Those are key things that you need to also talk about. If you have some financial details about what has happened, why not? Provide in their report. Support with evidence. Evidence with, you can also support even with witnesses, people who saw what happened, who can also provide more details from their own side. And what are the parties involved? Who are those involved with that particular activity? The most important thing is contact information. Even if you are reporting anonymously, you need to leave some details so that if some contact information, so that if they need more information on that particular situation, they should be able to get back to you for details. Okay, what protections exist when a matter is reported to OIG? It does not only limit to a matter being reported to OIG, even within our own organizations. We need to ensure that those who report, the whistleblowers, are protected. They cannot be discharged, they cannot be demoted, they cannot be intimidated, they cannot be discriminated upon if they reasonably believe in the information, believe the information they disclose is evidence of fraud, waste, and abuse. If somebody has to report in good faith, then the person should not suffer some kind of intimidation or some kind of discrimination. People need to be promoted and say, no, because this one had reported this situation, let the person not be promoted. So there should be that kind of protection. And the protection means that information that is shared needs to be kept as confidential as possible. If information is shared and it is not kept confidential, what happens? The person who reported is being exposed, and is exposed to intimidation, exposed to discrimination, and exposed to all or not. Because the person who the suspect will know that the information is coming from such and such person. So as we are looking at protection of the whistleblower, it also involves keeping the information that is being reported confidential. Okay, we try to do a knowledge check quickly. When reporting to OIG, you must disclose your name when submitting a report to the hotline. True or false? When reporting to the OIG, you must disclose your name when submitting a report to the hotline. Yes, I think all of us will go for B. You don't need to submit your name. The most important thing is contact information. The contact information, you can leave an email that they can get to you. You don't need to disclose your name. You can decide to report anonymously, and that is it, it's fine. Okay, we'll look at role of partner organs. I think we need to go very, very fast. And you need to report anonymously if you think that if you talk out, you may not be comfortable. Okay, what can organization do when alleged fraud is detected? They need to report the incident to management. This is just like a repetition or the board. The incident needs to be investigated. Appropriate measures are taken. And we also need to review our policies and procedures. What went wrong? Were there any gaps in our systems that needs to be corrected? And then the matter needs to be reported to USAID and even law enforcement for further investigation. Okay, report instances of fraud to OIG promptly if you suspect. That is the link which you need to report as soon as possible. We'll try to talk briefly of what happens when fraud is detected or reported. We'll look at the role of the Inspector General. The Inspector General is out to safeguard, provide oversight over foreign assistance, to safeguard and strengthen and provide oversight to make sure that there's no abuse in the foreign assistance. So these are the various functions. We have the Inspector General, we have the Office of Audits, Inspections and Evaluations, and then the Office of Investigations. So those are the organs. Okay, what happens when something is reported? If the misconduct is substantial, the Office of Investigation will initiate investigations into the alleged fraud, gather evidence of the matter, and then they are also required to report this matter to the U.S. Department of Justice if there are reasonable grounds found that there's violation of federal criminal law. So the USAID Office of Investigation will need to initiate investigations, and then at the end of the day, it needs to report to U.S. Department of Justice. Okay, so these are consequences of fraud. This is just a quick reminder. We have the program may not be able to provide program services. The reduced ability to achieve objectives. There's a reputational issue, loss of current funding. We've already looked at that. There could be some kind of other criminal, civil, and other penalties. Employment is terminated, imprisonment, the fines. Why not? People are asked to repay back the money which has been embezzled. Okay, there are some kind of recent headline cases. We talk about an issue where a partner supplies delivery of food to a region, that's somewhere around Ethiopia. This was finally found in the market. So aid food for aid relief, for relief to beneficiaries, is finally found itself in the market. And this is something that happened in April, and then USAID had to follow suit. But I think as we speak, by October, they started, after putting in place remedial actions, they started with the supplies. The other one has to do with falsifying invoices, where the human resource director of an NGO is found guilty for delivering goods and services to unauthorized third parties. And it could also attract 20 years imprisonment. Okay, we'll do a quick knowledge check as we move to the end of this presentation. Which function within the OIG is responsible for investigation for instances of fraud? We have 30 seconds to respond. A, Office of Audit, Inspections and Evaluations. B, Office of Investigations. I will take us back to the slide. I'll take us back to this slide and we'll read it again. If misconduct is substantiated, the USAID Office of Investigations, OIG Office of Investigations, will initiate an investigation into the alleged misconduct and will gather information and other evidence. So it is the Office of Investigation that is charged with the investigation within the OIG. Normally, the answer is supposed to be B. Okay, so as we round up, these are additional resources which are at your disposal. You have US strategy on countering corruption, whistleblowing statutes, all of this. As you get the slides, you have all of this information, there are resources at your disposal that should help you to fight fraud and contribute in the fight against fraud and corruption. So a final word when it comes to fraud and corruption, once you see something, what happens? Say something. Once you see something, say something. Thank you very much. I think we are at the end of the presentation. We'll give room for questions. I turn it over to Melissa. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you, Dominique. We have a few questions. Let me just pull up the first question, which was sent in the chat. The first question is, how do you best ensure that you have the right people manning the prevention, detection, and responding?
Yeah,
so I guess how do you select the staff? Yeah.
I think you are selecting based on their skills, based on their competencies. So I think that is the first thing. You should have the right people in the right place. Now, if you want somebody in fraud and prevention, that's why at times they need you to do some kind of certification that can give you an opportunity to gain more knowledge. They can tell you, okay, you have this certified internal auditors, or you have like this certified fraud examiners, or any other kind of certification that gives you an opportunity or an opportunity to gain more knowledge. Just like you would have worked in an investigation or a unit, internal audit unit, or like work as an external auditor, and you have gathered that kind of experience that can permit you do that role. So to sum it, we are looking at the skills, we are looking at the competencies. I think the other aspect has to do with who is involved. I think there's even some condition that is coming up. We're looking at integrity, which would normally be things that you can check over time from the time you recruit staff, and then perhaps you do a systematic check to get more information concerning the staff before you give them those kind of responsibilities. I think that is the bit, except perhaps there is a follow-up question. I don't know. If not, Melissa, we'll move on to the next question. Thank you.
Sure. The next question is really more of a comment, but let me read it out because I think it's an interesting discussion. It says, I agree that staff need to be paid well. However, I'm not sure about the approach of increasing salaries as a deterrent to fraud. There are issues of limiting LCP and also considering that some fraud appetite is out of pure greed. Can you maybe kind of go into a little bit more detail about why increasing salary might be a good strategy, or what are the pros and cons?
No, we cited a case of caseworkers who may have a lot to do. I know that salaries may not actually be some kind of deterrent to people committing fraud, but people need to be comfortable to be able to do their work, to be able to carry out their responsibilities, they need to have the means. They should put the means at their disposal, which should first of all deter them from thinking otherwise. But now the other thing has to do with ensuring that we have adequate controls in place. If somebody is working somewhere, does it always suffice that you wait for the reports, or you have to be sure that the person is effectively working? People should not come and they are signing, they are logging in and out into organizations of which they come and log, go them to their homes. At the end of the day, they come and they check out. So that's why I was saying it's first of all good to make sure that somebody will limit the pressure. Remember, when we're looking at the components of fraud, we talk about pressure. Pressure could come because of issues, because of some kind of economic, there can be economic pressures. The person does not have adequate money in order to even pay his own bills, the basic bills that the person have. So they start looking at, now, how do I survive? They start looking at the opportunities that are available. So, that's why I was thinking. That's why I think that for people should be well paid, but let's also watch the controls that are in place, because people can be well paid, and because of greed, they still want to commit the fraud. That is why if you have adequate controls and the controls are respected, and top management is able to dictate the tone for good governance, for transparency, for accountability, why not? Others down the ladder, we are bound to follow. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominique. The next question is on reporting of suspected fraud. Should it start from within IP reporting systems, or should it go directly to OIG?
When it comes to investigation, that's why we talked about when it comes to prevention, you need to put in place investigation procedures. Investigations within organizations will normally, you need to do an investigation and gather some minimum evidence that should permit you now report externally. And how do you do the investigation? You may first of all start by going through some kind of documentation review. You start looking at if there were some people who were cited as that can provide more information. You start with those that have least information about the issue as you progress to those that have more information before you end up with the person who is gradually involved, where you would have gathered all the evidence. It is always advised the investigation be carried out during working hours. Let it not be that they are carrying out investigation out of working hours, and even the person they're investigating, the supervisor, need to know that there's something like that is happening, so that everything is happening normally. The person is there, but investigations are carrying on. But until the moment where they have to get to the person and go through some interviews, interviewing the person, and they start providing the evidence one after the other, and so on. And in that, once the evidence already there, is like they're not going to seek his opinion, but they want to go and understand why the person committed the fraud. So it's that after you would have gathered all this information and you know that there's already some kind of evidence, why not start talking with the AOR before you eventually send an official report? Over.
Sorry, I was still on mute. Excellent. Thanks, Dominique. The next question is to question of where to report a fraud. The question of where to report a fraud is really not easy to answer, especially by saying immediate supervisor, because there are major cases where a supervisor is directly involved in fraud and as an inferior, it is difficult to report. What other measures can be taken to report such frauds without damaging the entire organization performance?
Thank you very much. Normally, there should be channels. We encourage organizations to have an email that should permit somebody to write. Why not go out there, create one email, and send the information, share the information with the email, so that investigations could happen. You don't need to talk directly with your supervisor when you know that your supervisor is involved in the matter. So that's why we encourage a whistleblowing policy, just like you have whistleblowing posters, which create that awareness that this can be reported. The fraud can be reported through such and such channels. And you go through an email, and you can then decide to report anonymously, just like you can report directly, indicate your name. But this email address, there should be some people of some high level of integrity who have access to this email, 2 of them. And then from there, you have a team that is a team that can do the investigation and establish the facts. So talking directly with our supervisor is a good thing. Is if you think that the person that is involved is not your supervisor, but there should be avenues for people to report directly anonymously through an email address. Why not? Other stakeholders, why not put in place a hotline that can permit you report? Our participants, there is a feedback survey. Please try to answer the questions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Melissa.
Thank you for mentioning the feedback survey, Dominique. Yeah, just as we continue the Q&A, we'll give people a chance to fill that out. And if you continue to submit your questions, we have plenty of time for questions. So if you have anything additional, please feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A box. The next question we have is, what happens if fraud involves top management? Who will the subordinates report to? Similar to the last question, but about top management, not just someone's supervisor.
Yeah, that one is a very tricky one. Now, top management, if within a sub-partner, why not report directly to the prime that this is a situation, so that the prime can be able to do the investigation. Here, I want to stress this one is very, very important. We should not just report because we want to create a difficult environment for people. Report in good faith. It is not something, information that you gathered along the corridor. It's something that you have some kind of evidence which can permit you report. And reporting, you need to describe the facts, as we said. When and where did it happen? What are the financial details? Now, are there any people who can provide more information? Who are the parties involved? So if you can be able to put all of this together, why not report to the prime that this is the situation? Let it not be that it's out to sabotage, but we can talk to the prime, because those are things that can bring a lot of difficulties to your organization. Now, if at the level of the prime, top management is also involved, and the staff thinks that those kind of things, we have had it in some kind of environments. The report, you can report directly to the donor, you can send it directly to the donor, and then investigations can carry on. And why not report to OIG? I don't think that there are some kind of obstacles, they block that, no, you shouldn't report to this level and the rest. So it's all for you to look at it critically. If you think that a staff other than the top management within your organization is involved, I think you want to alert top management so that they can investigate, find and go. But if top management is involved, then why not look at the next level? At the level of the prime, at the level of the donor, or at the level of the OIG. We've had those kind of circumstances that have generated investigations, and they look for a cabinet, a firm, to check the reality of the situation and report directly. Over.
Great, thank you. The next question is, how can the investigations be conducted if the reporter's identity is not disclosed? How can the investigators reach out to the anonymous whistleblower for the evidence?
Okay, that's why if you are reporting, you need to leave some contact information. You are reporting, there should be an email address where you can report. And that same email address that you use to send out the information, they can use it to reach back to you So you who has reported, you should check your information. Perhaps they may need more details concerning what the allegations. Or if you are using a telephone number, be prepared that they can call you back through that same telephone number in order to get more information. But if you report using an email, you talk about a situation, and they get back to you, you are not able to provide details, what happens? The situation is put in a drawer and it ends there. So you who reports is because you think that that abuse needs to be checked, needs to be investigated, and the people concerned, the suspect need to be sanctioned accordingly. So you need to collaborate with the investigation. Just like we indicated, the person who reports, even the person reporting anonymously, his identity must be kept confidential. The information needs to be kept as confidential as possible, because that is the key. If that aspect of confidentiality is not respected, at the end of the day, the person who reported will also will be intimidated, will suffer some kind of consequences, and then every other person may not be willing to report. That is, you kill that spirit of people helping to report fraud. Let's not forget that to dictate or to uncover fraud through the normal verifications of the auditors and so on is possible, but the highest way that you can know that it's a fraudulent activity is through a tip. A staff decides to talk out concerning a particular abuse, concerning fraud, concerning wastage. That way actions can be taken upon. So just to round up, if you don't provide details and you don't go back to check your email, you don't pick up your calls when they call to know more about what you have reported, then I think action cannot be taken over it. It may not be possible to proceed. It may be difficult to proceed. Over.
Great, thank you. The next question is, when fraud that occurred is in form of collusion, how can that be handled effectively during an investigation?
Now, when they talk about fraud that is not collusion, investigations are normally based on evidence, just like we indicated. You need to, and the evidence will be some kind of paperwork. Somebody decides to take an advantage of the company and has some kind of allowances that are not like the allowances are not, they don't have any kind of, the allowances have not been approved. Let's say a member of top management, they decide to have some kind of allowances, but these allowances have not been approved by the board, for instance. There will be proof that they are taking this money. There will be proof that this money is getting to their account. So we start with this document review, and then from there, we start, we'll get to more information from other people, perhaps the accountant or the HR who was helping in processing that particular payroll and so on may provide more details. Why they decided to act that way. Where is the person's contract and all that kind of information before we go now to settle down to the person and tell the person that, okay, this is what we pick out. You are getting an allowance, which has not been approved. So let the person, what could have caused him to go that way? Or why did he decide to do like that? So from there, the person, they establish the facts, and that is it. Once you can be able to quantify, now there are other things, the person may get to reimburse what he has taken unauthorized and all of that. So I don't think investigating an individual who has frauded and investigating those that are colluded is different. The only thing is, in the aspect of collusion, it may be quite difficult for you to know, because a group of persons have decided that they need to they need to defraud the company. So tips help, because 2 or 3 people have put their heads together. They say, no, this person can initiate, this one review, this one approves, and everything goes without any other person checking. And they take advantage of that throughout. So the investigations, it's not like a standard, they are not like some kind of standard procedures that a case A, this is how it's supposed to investigate, a case B, this is it, and so on. No. For every particular situation, you understand what is on the ground, and then you design how the investigation is supposed to be done. Over.
Great. I think we have one last question. Unless anyone else has any follow-up questions or additional questions, please feel free to ask them. But this last remaining questions is, what are the consequences for reporting untruth frauds? So I would imagine, what is the consequences for reporting frauds that end up to not be true?
Yeah, all of us know that there is some kind of I keep on talking about creating a difficult work environment where, and that is a situation where the issue being investigated is all over the whole place. If they keep the information confidential, you that is being investigated, you don't even know that there's an investigation like that one being done over you. At the end of the day, if they discover nothing, then you not even hear that there was something like that happened. But when we are within organizations where people talk a lot and information cannot be kept as confidential as possible, that you live within a meeting where you talk some key things, by the time you are reaching the door, everybody in the company already knows that this is what has been discussed within the meeting. It becomes quite difficult to keep the information really confidential the way it's supposed to be. And in that particular case, the employee or the staff, the suspect, will normally need to suffer some kind of prejudice, because just imagine people know it all over that you are involved in a fraudulent activity, but at the end of the day, it turns out that that activity is not true. So now you may start looking for, I don't know, there may be some kind of reparations, there may be some kind of compensations in that particular case if the information is all over the whole place. So it's up to top management. They need to know that once it comes to fraud, the investigation should be as confidential as possible. There should be no traces of that kind of information anywhere. It's not, if you not go on the table, you already have information there that can already start telling you that, no, this is what these guys are doing. And at times, even once you get to some kind of level of investigation, they even avoid sharing information even through email and all of that. You sit, you talk, and you go. You sit, you talk, you document, you write. The person, the interviewer, signs off the information, signs off what you have documented and all of that. It remains within you. And then now within the team, you can then sit and you discuss and avoid, and then keeping information in very, very secure places. You need to keep information to where people will not have access to. Not everybody will have access to. So yes, there can be an allegation. At the end of the day, it is not founded, but if it is kept confidential, then the person concerned will not suffer some kind of prejudice. But if the organization decides not to keep this information as confidential as possible, that's why there should be a policy to manage communications, internal, external communications within the organization, where they can also handle some of these areas of non-disclosure and all of that, which are issues that each employee should be trained and mentored on how to keep such information confidential. Over.
Excellent. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions, Dominique. So if you had anything else you wanted to add, feel free to add it now. If not, we can close early. Do you have anything else to add, Dominique?
Nothing to add, just to appreciate the participants. It is their responsibilities. It is our responsibility to make sure that donor funds are properly managed. And for these funds to be properly managed, we need to make sure that issues of transparency, issues of accountability, we hold it, all of us, very, very close to our hearts. There are mandatory disclosures which need to be done. We have to make sure that if there's an issue of fraud, there's an issue of conflict of interest, it needs to be disclosed. If it is not disclosed, there are consequences. And those consequences, we see them, at times there are consequences that can be managed, where we have some special award conditions that come in, they say these things can be remedied as soon as possible, but let's avoid a situation where it gets to areas where it cannot be remedied. When it cannot be remedied, we'll start seeing funds are being withdrawn, a project is being halted, part of a program and all of that. So all of us, we are interested to ensure that going through pains in order to win a project, we have to continuously work hard to keep this project. And to keep this project, we make sure systems are in place. The fraud policy is a key document to have in place. The code of conduct is a key document to have in place to make sure that things are managed. Then we have the whistleblowing policy, and then channels to report. People should be aware. People should be trained. And enough resources are put at their disposal to make sure that we keep all the effort that we have put in designing, in implementation, we keep it and sustain it as long as possible, and then learn some better lessons for future projects. Thank you very much, Melissa. I think I will hold it there, and I wish the participants luck as they continue to join us in our webinar series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominique. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have many webinars upcoming, so please make sure to check the ASAP website for any upcoming webinars. And we appreciate your time with us today. A reminder that today's presentation slides and a recording of today's presentation will be available on the ASAP resources page later today. So you have that available to you as a resource, and feel free to share that with your colleagues and coworkers as appropriate. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.